Follow him on Twitter at JJ Stankevitz. JJ, good morning. Thanks for your time. Hope all is well with you and your family. How are you?
Same to you guys. Hope all is well with you guys down there in Florida.
Okay. Nick Foles. How's this going over?
Well, it's interesting because I think Bears fans got in their mind on Monday that Teddy Bridgewater was going to be the guy, because there were some reports that the Bears were in contract negotiations with him, and the Bears were interested in Teddy Bridgewater, but Teddy Bridgewater was more interested in going to Carolina. So Bears fans got their hopes up on Monday. And then, there was always in the back of a lot of people's minds here that Derek Carr could become available if Tom Brady were to go to the Raiders. But as you guys know, Tom Brady and the Raiders, that never really materialized into anything that resembled legitimate interest. So those two options were not really viable by about Monday night. And then the rumors start coming out that, okay, it's down to Foles and Andy Dalton. And then, well, maybe Cam Newton's on the market. And I think some fans maybe even wanted Jameis Winston here. And I think Foles makes the most sense out of those four guys, just given that he knows Matt Nagy's offense. He knows Matt Nagy really well. He knows John DeFilippo really well. Bill Lazor was his quarterback's coach in 2013. Now he's his offensive coordinator in Chicago. And he's going to come in on equal footing for competition with Mitch Trubisky that he very well could win. And I think that ultimately makes the most sense for the Bears in this whole thing. Is it like this move that everyone's going to be super excited about, and the quarterback bugaboo in Chicago has finally been solved? No, but it's about as sensible a move as the Bears could have made, given that they didn't get Teddy Bridgewater or Derek Carr.
Okay, you said competition, and that's kind of what David and I, JJ, have been talking about in and around the show this morning. In your opinion, is this going to be Trubisky's job? Is this a situation like Mariota and Tannehill last year, where it's going to be Trubisky's job until he fails? Is it going to be Foles' job because they brought him in for that money, or is it going to be what we don't have too much anymore? We're going to enter training camp not knowing and have an actual quarterback competition.
I think it's door number 3 there, where they're going to have both Trubisky and Foles, your QB1 and QB1A, and let it play out. And I think Trubisky still has the upper hand because the team has put so much into him, but his leash is very short. It's about as short a leash as you can possibly get while still being a leash. I don't think this is a Mariota Tannehill situation, because Mariota still started, 4 or 5 games last year? Yeah, Mitch isn't going to make it to 4 games if he doesn't play well. And this is going to be a really quick switch. If Foles comes in and he looks like the Nick Foles that he was in Philadelphia, if he's the Super Bowl guy, then he's going to be the starter week 1. But if he comes in and he's just sort of that confident guy who you can trust, he knows where he's going with the ball, that is going to mean that if Mitch doesn't show that his regression is turned around, he's going to lose his job at or before week 1.
JJ, can Mitch handle losing the job? Because you could look at this way. They have to start the year with Trubisky, because once they pull the plug on him, that's it. There's no going back unless Foles gets hurt. And Foles can handle being the backup, and he can thrive coming in off the bench. Whereas Trubisky, if you prop him up as a starter for 2.5 years and then all of a sudden you yank him, well, he's probably done. Do you think there's something to that train of thought?
I do. We don't know what it's going to look like with Mitch now actually having to compete for his job, because he has never legitimately had to do that. When he was at North Carolina, he was behind Marquise Williams. So I don't know if you guys are big ACC fans down there, but Marquise Williams was a okay college quarterback who Mitch Trubisky did not beat out for a starting job. And I'm not sure if he was really even given a true opportunity to beat him out there in North Carolina. So then he comes to the Bears, and it wasn't really a competition in 2017 between him and Mike Glennon. They just had to pull the plug on Mike Glennon because Mike Glennon was so awful. And then Trubisky gets the job and keeps it because the Bears go out and get Chase Daniel, who was brought in to be a guy who is never going to start over Trubisky. So I think that this is going to be a really fascinating test of Mitch's mettle and his kind of mental fortitude, because if he does get benched, if he loses his starting job, if he's no longer QB1, how is he going to handle that? And I think the Bears need to consider everything to be on the table here, but at the same time, they need to win. This coaching staff, this front office has to win in 2020. Otherwise, their jobs could be on the line. So I think there's a legitimate sense of urgency here that the Bears are going to go into 2020 with, that if Mitch isn't playing up to what they need him to do, who cares if you ruin him for the rest of the year? You got to get him out of there.
Right now, if I were to tell you to just write down the order of how you think this division finishes, where would you put the Bears?
I would go, it's weird. I'd still probably put them second. I don't think as highly of the Vikings right now as maybe their record last year would indicate. But I think the Packers are still at the top, and then I would go with the Bears just because I think their defense is still really good, especially after getting Robert Quinn. Then the Vikings, and then the Lions. And that would be just sort of right now, before the draft, obviously, the Vikings have 2 first-round picks. We'll see what they do with those. That would kind of be my gut right now.
JJ Stankevitz covers the Bears for NBC Sports Chicago. Follow him on Twitter at JJ Stankevitz. That's Stankevitz. I do like the Quinn signing. I hate the Graham signing. I think he's shot. I just
you and everyone else.
Well, and also I think he's literally the 9th tight end they have on their roster in some way, shape, or form. I mean, at some point you really need to make a choice or two and cut a few guys. But if the Bears get the Nick Foles who ended the 2018 season for the Eagles, where he came off the bench, won 4 of 5, then beat the Bears in a playoff game and lost a close one in New Orleans. If that's the Nick Foles that the Bears get, how good of a team do you think they are?
Good enough to make the playoffs, not good enough to win the Super Bowl. And I think that would be viewed as acceptable in Chicago, but ultimately, I think we will look back on this whole thing, and if that's what the Bears have to do, if they turn to Nick Foles, they make the playoffs, maybe they win Wild Card Weekend, and then lose in the second round of the playoffs, then okay, the Nick Foles trade might be viewed as a success. But let's just not let if that happens, we can't let the Bears off the hook here, because they drafted Mitch Trubisky to win a Super Bowl, and they drafted him. They moved up one spot. They had to have him so badly that they couldn't settle on Patrick Mahomes or Deshaun Watson, because they thought he would win them a Super Bowl, multiple Super Bowls. And if we get to the point where we're congratulating them because Nick Foles won a playoff game, then to me that's fine, but it's not a success ultimately.
What else do they need, JJ? Because this offense was bad. Nick Foles is not going to resurrect it completely. There are other pieces need. What you mentioned, the defense is still most considered elite. But how much help does this offense need? And with a draft that's got a lot of tackles and a lot of receivers, there are ways to help this offense between the rest of free agency, with taking the Graham thing out. But where else do the Bears need to improve so that if they're right with Nick Foles, they've got the right pieces with Nick Foles?
They really need an upgrade at right. Currently with Kyle Long, to me that is the key to unlocking their running game, is just kind of finding a right guard who can kind of brawl in the interior and kind of create the holes that have not really been there for Matt Nagy's run game that he needs to trust. So I don't think they have the money in free agency to go out and get a really top-of-the-line right guard of any of the guys who are left. Like, they weren't going to give $11 million to Graham Glasgow, who got that in Denver. They weren't going to give $10 million to Eric Flowers. So I think they need to find just like a veteran and then use one of their 2 second-round picks on a right guard. They have to get better at that position. Getting Nick Foles will be fine, But if they don't fix their run game, this offense is still one-dimensional, and Foles will probably struggle in it. Then beyond that, I think they just need to find another playmaker somewhere. They have an opening at wide receiver after they released Taylor Gabriel last month. I don't think they spend there in free agency. I mean, who knows? Maybe Robbie Anderson all of a sudden becomes an option because his market has been slow to develop. But I think that that's another spot where the Bears could target a wide receiver in the draft, given that it is a pretty deep draft for receivers, and there are some speed guys who could fit what the Bears need. And then beyond that, on offense, they need another running back, which is kind of weird to say because they traded up for David Montgomery last year. But I think they need another guy to complement him because Tariq Cohen really is not a running back and is not a very good fit as a running back in this offense. So those are your kind of other moves they need to make. And then I think the last thing is they should draft a quarterback this year. I don't think they should take one of their second-round picks, but take a spin on a guy, and maybe you wind up with a Gardner Minshew. You probably won't, but Ryan Pace said in 2015 it's good business to draft a quarterback every year. He's drafted one quarterback in his 5 drafts. That needs to start changing right now.
It'd be interesting to see if a Jake Fromm would be their day 3, someone like that. But, JJ, you mentioned Montgomery, that they need another back. Wouldn't it be nice, JJ, if they just used David Montgomery? I mean, they did draft him to play on the team. It would be nice if they let him touch the damn football more than 3 times a game.
Well, yeah, there's that is kind of step one of Matt Nagy just needs to trust the run game, which is why I was talking about the right guard, because David Montgomery is a talented running back. We saw it last year. Everything that he put on tape at Iowa State showed up with the Bears. And that is good enough for David Montgomery to be a solid NFL running back. He got 243 carries last year, which is only 7 fewer than Jordan Howard had in 2018. But a lot of those came at end-of-game situations where Matt Nagy said, all right, we just need to kind of burn the clock. We can't put the ball in Trubisky's hands. So I think that there needs to be a greater commitment to the run. Matt Nagy knows that. I just think the solution for it has to be found this offseason because Matt Nagy does have a very quick trigger finger in getting away from the run, like you mentioned. I think bringing in Juan Castillo to be their new offensive line coach, Bill Lazor as their new offensive coordinator, Clancy Barone as their new tight ends coach, those 3 guys are going to be largely tasked with fixing the run game. Whether or not they can do it kind of remains to be seen, but that is where Matt Nagy's trust is going to have to come from, is from this off-season planning to get this run game really fixed. Because last year they viewed the run game as a personnel thing, which is why they essentially traded in David Montgomery or Jordan Howard for David Montgomery. This year they're viewing the run game as a scheme thing. That's where the fix needs to be made. It does not need to be made in the personnel department. It has to be made in the scheme department, and that's where the Bears are spending a lot of their energy right now.
JJ, I got to admit, I saw the Bears a lot last year. I thought it was a Matt Nagy problem. I thought his play calling was not good. I mean, I was there for that Saints game. They went nearly 2 hours. They called one running play. That game was manageable during those 2. Is Matt Nagy going to do some serious self-evaluation here? I mean, he's acted as if he's got Pat Mahomes at quarterback, how often they throw the ball. I mean, you're a cold-weather team with defense. You've got a serviceable quarterback. I mean, there are 30 other offensive coordinators who would have run the ball. I think it's a Matt Nagy problem. How close is he to turning over play calling, or Ryan Pace saying, dude, this ain't working, all right? Somebody else needs to call the plays. We can't have ratio. I mean, is that a legitimate topic for conversation within the Bears organization?
Yeah, but Matt Nagy's not giving up play calling. He told us at the Combine he is not going to give it. He's still going to be their play caller. And I think you're right. It is a Matt Nagy problem. The one thing I will say is that of all the issues with the Bears from last year on their offense, and there were many, I think I trust Matt Nagy to fix them more than I trust some guys to just, miraculously start performing better, like Trubisky or some of their offensive line issues. I think Matt Nagy is still a really smart football coach who he let last season get away from him. And I think if you just kind of grabbed him at a bar with a couple beers, he'd admit that.